Hello and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Football Scoutcast. You are joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by Joe, FF Scout Joe. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going very well. I've some viewers may have seen me in action on a video that went viral last week, so
Oh,
I was very pleased
you,
about that.
you're
And
going to need to explain that because that sounds a little bit dodgy already.
I was on a viral video, and I was in a cupboard.
Oh dear. Please explain it more.
Okay, it was a comedy sketch involving content creators and how on earth they produce so much content, and the answer is they're locked in a cupboard and they're not allowed out until they
Pretty
make
much.
loads of content.
Pretty much, yeah. Az just gets us all in a cupboard, doesn't he? And
Yeah,
gets us
that's
to
it.
create content. Yeah.
Giant cupboard.
Yeah. And we are also joined by Seb. Seb, how's it going?
Hello, mate. It's going okay, thank you. A little lethargic, It's warm. It's warm again. Last time it was this warm, we weren't streaming, so I didn't have to sit with three machines. This is where I work as well. So I've got three machines around me here.
Yeah.
But other than being a bit slower than usual, or not, I'm okay, thank you. How are you?
Surely it's less mentally taxing now that our teams are locked in as well. Like, first week's done. We don't have to worry about all these different changes. That must be quite nice to not have that mentally taxing thing on your head all the time.
Yeah, but before game week one, when you're the best manager in the world, because everything's open to you, all the possibilities are open. Well, I didn't pick Kulusevski, so that one's already gone. So I don't know.
Some of us did.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Joe, do you want to tell us about what we are doing this evening, what we're talking about?
Yes, indeed. Well, first of all, people might have noticed that the introductions are slightly different. We've retired the "My name is Joe, my name is Seb, my name is Andy" bit, which is the last vestiges of the original Scoutcast. And ironically, I was at Fest on Friday, meeting a number of managers. Some I hadn't met before in real life, only in video form. And but also there were Mark and Granville, the original hosts of the Scoutcast, who I have met before, and it was good to see them again. So yes, I met them there, and as I met them, suddenly the last bit of the original Scoutcast has gone. So onwards and upwards to the future, a brave new world. What's coming up on the show? Back to that. We're going to look back at game week one, what lessons we can learn going into game week two. I'll do a what if I were to wildcard section. If we were that impatient, who would be coming in, who would be leaving? So lots of attacking stats in particular there from game week one. Andy will look at well-owned flops. Should we keep or sell? And Seb is taking an in-depth look at the new look Manchester City, now with Haaland up top. There's points tallies to look at from game week one, game week two, teams to reveal, community team latest, and teacher Andy will be taking charge of another community Q&A session. So me and Seb will be doing our best to convince Andy of our various arguments. So get your questions ready in your heads for the end of the show. Plus, we will attempt to get all our pronunciations right. Haaland, you may have noticed I said there, not Haaland, Haaland, and not Jesus, it's Jesus. So there's going to be a few more there. Still, we are the only show to get Joe Ellington right. It's Joe Ellington, not Joe Linton, as everyone else is saying, especially on Match of the Day. So we'll do our best, and we'll get some wrong as well.
We will do our best. And Seb, just very quickly before I go on to the scores, we do have a super question in the chat. Could you just make a note of it so we can answer it towards the end of the show? Because if we answered all the super questions throughout the show, it would ruin the flow of the show, the lovely flow of the show. So we just want to make sure we're going as normal. So on to the first team, which to see how we got on with the points, and it is mine. So I had 79 points. I had Ward in goal, who got me 1 point. Trent, who got me 1 point. Cancelo got me 7. Robertson got me 1. James got me 7. Salah, captain, got me 24. Martinelli got me 8. Bailey got me 2. Kulusevski, my hero, got me 13. Haaland got me 13, and Jesus got me 2. I'm not going to lie, this is pretty much how well it could have gone for me. I think Kulusevski was the position that I was really stuck on. And even last week when we looked on Scoutcast, I had Mount in here instead. And it was between Mount, Saka and Kulusevski. And I ended up on Kulusevski because I wanted some kind of coverage for that first game against Southampton. And the plan was always going to be, and Seb will talk about this later because we've been talking about it on Twitter today, that I was going to move Kulusevski out for Foden next week. I now am in the position where Kulusevski absolutely smashed it in the first game. I quite like the fact that he's in my team, and game week 3 and 4, he's looking good as well. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about that later, about what I'm going to do next. But 79 points, I'm extremely happy with that. I'm extremely happy with my team moving forward. Obviously, going with Haaland instead of Kane, it's just worked out well. I think they were both good shouts. So I think, we're going to probably talk about that later as well. But yeah, 79 points. I think that's a solid start from me. So I will very much take that. Ward and Everson, obviously, I've got those two in goal. But for 8 million for the two of them, I'm not too fussed about that. So yeah, 79 points. And I am very, very happy. Seb, if we move on to your points, you have got 74 points. So you had Ward in goal, you had Trent, you had Cancelo, you had Gabriel, you got you 7 points, which is lovely, and James getting you the 7. You had pretty much the exact same midfield as me, except you had Luis Diaz instead of Kulusevski, who only got you 2 points. And then you had Haaland and Jesus up top as well. So 74 points. Happy? How do you feel about it? 0.5 in the bank as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 0.5 in the bank. And yeah, absolutely fine. A lot of people got very similar teams, so it's marginal stuff. Kane over Haaland, or like in your case, the right 8 million midfielder for this week. So nothing to complain about. I do have Walker on my bench with his 6 points, I think it was. So in theory, I should have started Walker over Bailey. But as I discussed with Andy Sonaldo on Friday, whenever it was, really the choice was never that. It was whether I would go Walker or Gabriel. If I wasn't going to start Bailey, I shouldn't have had him in the first place. I should have had a 4.5 and just benched them. So while I could have done that, I wasn't really ever thinking about it. So I'll take Gabriel's 7 over Walker's 6 or whatever it was.
Yeah, very nice. And do you know, it's very interesting actually, because it wasn't Gabriel that caught the headlines, was it? It was the person next to him, that's Saliba, who looked incredible for 0.5 million less as well. So that could be something that we think about for wildcards later on in the season.
I think what's interesting, and the reason I did this sort of, despite, obviously normally being a big fan of a cheap bench, which I have elsewhere, having this one slightly more expensive spot on my bench was because I picked people like Bailey, people like James, Walker, who we didn't necessarily know if they were secure for 90s, and we don't really know that still. Mm-hmm. And then Gabriel. The reason I picked Gabriel, I nearly had Zinchenko, but of course we all did. It's the summer. But the reason I went with Gabriel is just because I thought, he's pretty nailed in that back line. Like, I won't go White for cheaper because we don't know what happens when Tomiyasu comes back. Yeah. Zinchenko, let's see. And actually, ironically, I think Saliba for 4.5 is probably their most secure starter based on only 1 week of information. So if anyone ends up leaving, it's probably Gabriel for me at some point.
Yeah, I tell you, that Saliba looked good. He looked very, very good. Didn't look like his first game in the Prem, I can tell you that. And then Joe, on to you. We're obviously coming to you last because, you're 1.5 million in the world. I don't know what's happened to your season so far.
I know, it's gone wrong. I'm going to give up. I'm going to throw all my toys out the pram.
You tried very hard to get a very sexy points, 69.
Yes, it did get the Bill and Ted score, so that's absolutely fine. There's something like about 500,000 ranking points different from about 2 or 3 points at the moment, so not too worried. I have with my team, I can't even remember who I had now. I had Ward, unfortunately, in goal. So I had a Ward Sanchez double up. Alexander Arnold, Cancelo. Gabriel is I was very pleased with getting my bonus point. How it's going to work out when I don't know. They might just keep White a right back. Who knows? But I think Gabriel looks as secure as he always has been. I think if I wildcarded now, if I were to wildcard, which we'll come to in a bit, I think I'd probably free up that space for a Chelsea James, basically James, and use and not bother with any of this Ward fanning around with Ward and Everson business, and just get Ramsdale in and just focus on those clean sheets there. But one of the reasons I got Gabriel, and I think Seb, is Gabriel in your team as well, Seb?
He is, mate, yeah.
But one of the reasons is because Crystal Palace and Leicester are absolutely pants at defending set pieces, and Gabriel is known. He's got the odd goal in him. So I was just hoping I would get a cheeky goal there, differential goal. But we'll see. He's still got Leicester's mighty or less than mighty defence to go. Other issue there, Mason Mount. I'll come to him in a bit in the next section, but I don't know what's going on there. I'm certainly not going to get rid of him after one game. There were some reports. Some people just felt that he wasn't quite right that particular game. but he's certainly been right in pre-season, so it's not an issue I'm particularly worried about. And he's got a good fixture next. So yeah, well, let's just see. And people are worried about Bailey as well, but I think Villa were all out of sorts, and it's not just Bailey there. And when Bailey faced Everton last season, he had a goal and assist, I believe, in his 20-minute cameo came on. So he clearly likes playing Everton. Let's see. And Everton arguably are worse now, but then arguably so are Villa. Very happy with the Haaland v Kane decision, which I think all Haaland v Kane people will go with. There's already some chat in the live chat about how to pronounce his name. Apparently, Haaland says Haaland is fine, but then a Norwegian has come into the chat saying it's in fact Haaland. So I'll let them go to it. We're just going to stick with that until someone has a go at us, and then we'll change it. But we're doing the best we can. Doing the best we can.
So lovely stuff. I should say as well, before we get on to looking at the first segment, which is going to be Joe's segment, all about if he were to wildcard, what would he do? And we're going to be looking at attacking teams. Hello to a few people in the chat. Lots of people mentioning your video, Joe, how much they loved it. Andy Martin's in the chat. Ivan Fedorstov. Lynn is in the chat, taking a mickey out of my name again. Terrible. Never Give Up FPL. Mike Hikin, sorry if I've butchered that. Elliot Parsons, all of you, thank you so much for being in the chat. Make sure you do like and subscribe to the stream as well. Also, just very quickly to mention, Joe, 69 points. Myself, 79 points. 1,200,000 spaces between us. Rank means absolutely nothing at the moment. 10 points is the difference between one player in a team next week. Like, it means nothing. So if you're not where you want to be in your overall rank, it means nothing after game week 1. So do not worry. Right, so Joe, do you want to explain to us what your next segment's going to be about? Because I've got some slides to put up, but I thought you could just explain it a bit.
Okay, yes, I will do. I just want to point out that it's not my video that I was in. It's by a comedian, FPL Face Off Tom. And so do have a look for him on Twitter. If you haven't seen his stuff, he's got loads of funny FPL videos. Do have a look at that. So yeah, what if I were to wildcard? I've called this. So some people are already thinking about it, which is crazy, but I'm not. But it's a good way of sort of framing what lessons we think we might be able to learn after just 1 week. Is it best to be patient? Do we know the best attacks? Do we know the teams to target, the worst defenses? Well, we've had a few hints, so we may do. So, for example, I think I've already made a mistake going Mount over James. Time will tell for that one, but I just think James was so involved. Even if Mount was better in that game, James is just a machine. He's just gonna jettison points all across people's teams, and that's what I want. So I think I would look to get James in over Mount, and he's a bit cheaper. So that's just what I think there, but other people might not think that. On the flip side, I am very happy to go Haaland over Kane. And it was Praz on the Burning Questions video that was the decider in my head for that. And he was basically laying out various scenarios. If Haaland scored a brace or a hat-trick and Kane blanked and you had Kane, would you make that move? Because the prices are going to change quick. And when would you do it? And it was sort of playing the game, and that sounded awful. So I just thought, whoever you go for, just pick it. So if I had got Kane, I wouldn't start swapping him out. He's got a great game week 3 fixture. He scored many a goal against Chelsea, and he's still good. But Haaland, is the one I'm happy to stick with. He's a machine. We talked about him a lot on the captaincy video. So we got some stats to consider go through
They're up
first.
on the screen now.
Oh, is it the game week 1 most attacking players stats? Hopefully. So looking at that, these no surprises, because obviously everyone knows who scored, who was available, who got assists, etc. But Pascal Gross from the mighty Brighton. It wasn't Manchester United were bad. It was Brighton were excellent. So that's the narrative I'm pushing.
Bit of both.
Pascal Gross was the highest rating there on expected goal non-penalty. He's only 5.5. So if you started with him, great. I know someone in my mini league who has benched him, which might hurt a bit. But I think he is a great asset. He's been priced very kindly, and he's still good, and he's still sort of integral to Brighton's team. And he although he does love to score against Manchester United. Haaland, next up, expected goals, non-penalty of nearly 1. But obviously that takes into account penalties as well. His expected goal involvement was nearly 2. He scored 2. Shots inside the box, 5. That's brilliant. Chances created, none. So you are not going to get assist points out of this guy. You are just going to get goals. the whole team look well. Something Seb's going to talk about, but it's the team wants him to score, basically. Yeah. So I want to own that person that everyone wants him to score. Then Donker, Wolves, a couple of shots inside the box. Next up, he's an attacking player there. Wilson, Newcastle, created 2 chances, 4 shots inside the box. Really good FPL asset, I think, at the moment, if he can stay fit. Darwin Núñez, really interesting. Came on. And will it force Salah to play wide a bit more? Will Salah become more of a creator? Núñez could be the one to hoover up the goals. 4 shots inside the box, 2 chances created. So he's got assist potential as well. He's someone, if I were to wildcard, I would seriously consider getting. And that could be, I don't have enough detail yet, but you know what I'm going to say, it could be at the expense of Salah. But that's a big call. And I'm not going to make that after 1. But I think it could be that he is the one because he's 4 million cheaper or so, 3.5 million cheaper. Yeah. 4 million cheaper. So Nori, defender, Wolves, 3 chances created. He's next up in expected goals, non-penalty. Eze at Crystal Palace, only 5.5 million. Sessegnon at Tottenham, underlining basically the Tottenham fullbacks, get them in. But then I think they've just signed another one today. So that means there's, I don't know, about 1 million.
He loves his fullbacks.
So which one are you going to get? Take your pick. But I don't know. You either get them all or get none. Salah, he's still there. But interestingly, his expected goal non-penalty is 0.38, really low. But he did create a chance, and in fact, his assist potential, as we spoke about in the Capsy video, is quite good. So he could be more of a creative role. Hard to tell at the moment. And then finally on that list, we've got Martinelli, which, he's like Twitter template. He's Fantasy Football Scout forum template. He's what, we've all seen him in pre-season. We know he's great value. We know that if he's going to get starts, he's going to do well. Yeah, a couple of shots inside the box, got a goal and created a chance as well. So for both of you, I mean, looking at that list there, if you were to wildcard, who of these that you own would you keep? Who of these that you don't own would you look to get in? I mean, Seb, some of these names here. I mean, obviously it's only 1 week, isn't it? But what do you reckon about any of these?
I mean, I don't know if I guess I wouldn't pick the same team because I've got a little bit more information, some biases. But I feel like unless something's gone horribly wrong, and this links into maybe what me and Andy will chat about in a bit, wildcarding after game week 1. Is that, well, why? What have you learned in that single week that could have changed it so much? Now, maybe you have. Like, if you have, cool. I don't know if I have personally. So things like Núñez, Salah, even a bit of City are still questions to be answered. I don't think we have those answers yet. And obviously, when Champions League comes in, me and Andy were talking about this just before stream. Darwin, even if he is their number 9, he's going to get rotated. Haaland is definitely going to get rotated, either because he will suffer injury, unfortunately, because he does have that in his history, or because he won't suffer injury because he's being rotated. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I mentioned to Andy beforehand, that we end up with, like, say, 2 City and Liverpool defenders and only 1 attacker midfielder just because of that. Specifically on Salah and Núñez, what interests me, and I think, people will talk a lot about this week, and fair enough, I think really we need to see more, is that, when Núñez plays, maybe Salah is pushing wider. But he still ended up with, as you can see here, a respectable XGI. Núñez's per 90 is something like, I think it's like 3.6 per 90, which means he would get 140 goals and assists over the season if he carried on like that.
Let's get him in.
Exactly. So obviously, I'm not saying, he's going to regress to minus 139. Point is, that was fabulous, but he isn't going to play like that for 90 minutes every week. And Salah still put up decent numbers. We saw the goal he scored, right? He was on top of Núñez for that. So even if he starts wide, coming inside is not going to be a problem for him. No. Maybe he creates a few more, but I wouldn't be worried about that position just yet. Give it another couple of weeks to be sure. But what we saw at the weekend, no stress at all.
What about your team though? I mean, the decisions that you've made before game week 1, are there any that you're thinking now? Well, I'm going to monitor that situation. So you've got Diaz?
I guess I sort of answered that a bit earlier. So with I picked some of my team with just X-Mins in mind and who I thought would get 90 and wouldn't. So your Walker, Gabriel, Bailey, even Reece James. I guess if we're now thinking Reece James started brilliant, hell, Chilwell started, so maybe we consider that. I'd probably get Saliba, I guess, rather than Gabriel. I mean, that's super reactionary, but it's a nice one to have. And then maybe I'd have more confidence in Walker because he played the 90, so I'd be safe with that. The other one, which is more relevant to Andy, is the Foden thing. He started, not only did he start, he started on the right. So he probably started when we didn't necessarily expect him to, and he started in a new, in inverted commas, position, which probably opens up even more opportunity for him starting in the future. So maybe that pushes him up the 8 mil list for me. But other than that, I think I'd stay pretty constant.
I think the big question as well, though, and Joe, I'll put this to you first. Nunes, people are thinking, right, I need to get this player into my team because he's looked electric when he's played so far, hasn't he? He looks like he's going to be starting. It's got a nice fixture, Crystal Palace, and even nicer fixture against Man United the week after that. But the big thing is you can't own 4 Liverpool players. You can't just bring him in. Most people have 3 and they're going to have to be ditching one. You're not going to be ditching Salah, most people. You're not going to be ditching Trent. So the big question is, do you ditch one of Robertson or Diaz for Nunes? Because Diaz looked good. He hit the post. He had a few shots in that as well. Robertson is Robertson. You know he's going to get points by the end of the season anyway. So of those 2, Joe, if you owned one, which one would you be saying, yeah, I can get rid of him and get Nunes, knowing that you have to downgrade somebody else to get up to that 9 million as well?
I do think, given Haaland, given all of the other players that we want, I do think that Nunes and Salah is tricky. I still think that's tricky, but doable. And if I did that, Salah, Nunes, it would be Robertson would go. So I would sit for Alexander-Arnold. But if it was a case of if I own Diaz, making do. But I think that's it's a decision. If people were to wildcard, they would be looking at the budget there and thinking, essentially, it's like, do they go freemium? And also, I don't think it's a case of which Liverpool ones will make. Well, obviously, we can only have 3. But if I went for Nunes, I think Jesus at Arsenal would have to go. And I certainly don't have enough information, considering his electric pre-season, how, just because he blanked against, which was one of the toughest games they've got early on from an attacking point of view. I certainly don't want to ditch him at the moment, but that would be a situation I would monitor. Jesus and Robertson out, I think.
So this is why I think most people are thinking about wildcarding when they didn't think they would be, is because they want 3 up top now. I feel like people want Haaland, they want Jesus, and they want Darwin as well. And I think that's the main reason.
Well, this is why I didn't want 1 up top, because there will always be players that you want to get to. You want to have a flexible team. Teams that went, deliberately, just 1 up top, and then they had, like, I don't know, what about Archer and Greenwood as their next, then they can't get to as easily Mitrovic and Jesus and Nunes. They can't get to all of these players. But I'm already thinking about 3 up top. And I think in some of the videos I've done before as well in pre-season, I quite like 4-3-3 as a setup, because I feel there's so many teams with new strikers, with new attacking formations. So when they've got good fixtures, Mitrovic scored twice against Liverpool, so that was a tough fixture. In the easy games, wow. So I want him. I want. There's lots of strikers I suddenly want, and there's not so many midfielders I'm still a bit unsure about, really. So you've got Kulusevski. But I'd like to see Kulusevski when Richarlison's in the squad and see what happens then. Also, when Champions League comes up, I just want to see what sort of minutes he's getting. I presume he's going to have the same role, but how often will he play? Or will he be moved? I don't know. It's only been 1 game week.
I guess my question on that, like, it applies to a couple of things you've said, like the Jesus Mount swap that you might want to do, the strikers. is like entirely valid to do that now. Fair enough, but I'd wonder why that has changed so much with just 1 week's worth
Well, it
of
hasn't,
knowledge.
because I've been saying it pre-season. I've really liked 3 strikers up top.
So why did you go? Why did you not go with it?
Well, I've sort of gone in my classic hedging my bets way. I've gone for 2 strikers up top, because if I'm wrong, then and in 3 strikers I won't want, well then I'm fine. I've got 2. Or if all strikers are terrible, then I can go down to 1. And 3 strikers is completely attainable for me, because I've got other players who are sort of cash cows, like for example Mason Mount. So I can move that money up there. So that's why I've done it. I thought 4-4-2 is the I don't know what's going to happen. I could be right, I could be wrong. That's the best flexible formation. But I also think I'm readying 4-3-3. I don't think I'm quite at 3-4-3 yet. I think there's still too many great points potential players in defense. But 4-3-3 is something I'm seriously
I'm interested to see if this changes, if like Saka and whoever Mount come and score next week. I think so. For my position, for my team, obviously 5-3-2/4-4-2, but with 0.5 in the bank, I could do that. Gabriel to Saliba, Diaz to a non-playing midfielder, and then I could do my non-playing forward straight up to Darwin, and I could keep Jesus if I wanted.
Because you started with 2 strikers, you see.
Yeah, I mean that isn't the plan, but it's attainable. I think. Speaking of Diaz, the reason I don't want to lose Diaz just yet is with Jota. We're not sure when he's back yet. I don't think a couple of weeks. When he is back, sure, then I think Diaz's minutes could be at threat. There's also that Jota Darwin playing up front. We're not sure which one it'll be. Probably Darwin, right? But there's going to be some rotation. But while he isn't in the team, I think Diaz is. I mean, Nunes only came on because of injury. He didn't start. I think he starts next week. But if you didn't think he would start and therefore didn't pick him, you made the right call. He only came on because of injury, and then he did brilliantly. Great. But Diaz, hit the post, had 1 goal ruled out for offside or something. So did absolutely fine himself. Doesn't appear in the table here for the numbers, but hey, I'm a fan of the numbers, but with 1 week, that's the weakness, right? All the things the numbers would normally average out can't average out because it's only 1 week. So we don't see that Diaz hit the post and had a goal ruled out for offside. We don't see that Jesus, I think, played brilliantly. And would have maybe got the assist from Martinelli's goal, the one he put wide that was a good chance. Yeah. So, they don't appear on this list because they didn't play quite well enough, but they weren't that far away. And so I'm pretty content in those 2 for now, at least.
Well, we've just spoken about those Liverpool boys for quite a while. And before I want to go on to Joe's second section, we need to talk about Haaland, because he just looked immense. He just looked so good in that fixture. And the bit that scared me was how fast he was to get to that penalty as well. When he won the pen,
he's massive and fast so and accurate. And he did. How many shots did he have? I can't remember. It wasn't.
He had 5 inside the box.
Oh, made 5 shots, but it shows his act. So he's got, obviously one's a penalty there, but he looks fast, accurate, scary as well. I compared him in the captaincy video earlier to Drogba in that. He's just, if you were a defender and you're facing Drogba or Haaland coming at you, then it's scary.
He's being compared to Rude quite a lot as well, isn't he? Like that same kind of poacher. And for me, the big thing this week has been, if you've got Kane, what do you do? Because obviously Sunday night, Haaland went up, Kane went down. Like they had not even 6 hours to make that change.
I'll go back to what Praz was saying on the burning questions. It's about the gameplay of it. You've got to think about you're playing the game, the strategy of it. If I started with Kane, I would keep him, and I would captain Salah against Palace. He's got a great record against Palace, and because in game week 3, Kane's got a really great fixture. But also, if you go from game week 3 through to game week 6, which is probably the latest or when I might wildcard or consider it. Brentford at top of the fixtures, then Tottenham. They got Wolves, game week 3. Then Nottingham Forest. Note, I didn't say Notts Forest. Nottingham Forest, West Ham, and Fulham. So good bunch of fixtures there. So I think I would keep him, but I didn't, because I knew that game. Because I knew you'd be faced with that dilemma. You would go you'd have to just switch off social media. I would have to not do this. You would have to ask me that question. I would just go, I'm not listening. And so that's why I started with Haaland, because I thought whatever happens, I'm going to want Haaland in game week 2, and chances are I'm going to want to stick with him. So that's what I do. So
So Seb, if you still had Kane, if you've gone through the price changes, you're looking at him and you're thinking, God, Haaland's he's probably going up again either tonight or tomorrow night. What would you be doing? Would you be taking that -4 and getting Haaland in, or if you kept 0.5, would you be making the switch? Like, I mean, that is the big question people are asking, isn't it?
That's the thing. Like, I guess if you were going to make it, you needed to make it before that price change. If you haven't, and you're now 0.1 short,
people might not have been in England. People might have been asleep. People might.
I'm not taking a -4. I'm not taking a -4 for that, because, like, you know, if as Joe said, if we think Kane is decent going forward, and it's just this one match for Haaland, starting already a goal behind, which is what 4 points is worth for a forward, assuming you have Salah, because the captaincy between Salah and Haaland is actually pretty close. So it's not like you're going, I have to have the only captain that's available this week, so it's a -2, not a -4, or whatever you want to call it. I probably wouldn't. But yeah, sure, if I had done it for the price change, absolutely fine. Some people had that as the plan, right? They had, a bit like your Foden Chelsea thing, but just different position. People had the plan of starting with Kane and then going to Haaland, so fine, do that. I started with Haaland simply, I think I've said it 3 different ways there, fun. I started with Erling. Whatever.
That massive bloke.
You know what I have in my head? I have, every time we do this, I have, so I'll say it how I would say it, I guess, Odegaard, or in my head, because obviously he's also Norwegian. And I remember hearing, I think, him say it once, and it was like, Erdegaard. Sorry if I've, that's horrible to anyone. But whenever I then say Haaland, in my head I have that, and the sounds, I don't think it's Hoyland. The sounds all just get horribly mixed up, and yeah.
Do you know what?
But so yeah, just to finish that.
Hoyland.
No, yeah, but I picked Erling, Braut, because I didn't want to then have to play that hokey cokey between Kane and himself. But I think it was so very close that variance. There's that word for the first time this season, right? And it's a similar question for you, Foden and Chelsea. You had that plan to make the transfer. You're now not so sure.
I'm going to disagree with both of you. I think you have to get in. I think you have to get in.
So for a -4?
Yeah, even for a -4.
What about a -8? At what point do you not get it?
Not -8. I don't think anybody would have to take a -8 to get him if they're on Kane.
But Kane's got a good
so he has to score 2 goals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, he has to score 1 goal. But
if
yeah,
you're that
so
worried about him, if you're that worried about him, you captain him.
Are you then transferring him back to Kane, or are you then just on?
No. Haaland's going to be in your team then, because for me, you watch that game, you watch what he's like. He might get injured later on, and yes, you can get Kane in, but for me, he's going to ruin this league. He's going to absolutely destroy this league.
So none of this is new information, though, and this is the conversation we were having, right?
It is new information.
He had a better XG against Liverpool. He had a better XG against Liverpool.
We spoke about this, and people did not like this last week that you said Salah was better after AFCON, because the stats were better, but the output wasn't better. And look at all those people that did better at the end of the year.
Goals is still a stat. People just want to pick the one that suits what they want to say.
But we didn't know whether Haaland was going to take to this league like we thought, and he has taken to this league after one game, and he put up a very impressive XG against the best defence he'll face all year. I don't think having to then face West Ham proved anything that facing Liverpool didn't prove. But what it did prove was that the people that went Kane, who should have had a lovely haul against Southampton when they scored 4 goals, didn't have that, and they had to watch Haaland play that game and think, oh my goodness, he's going to destroy
I'll give you that.
opposition.
If you told me that Man City were winning 2-0 and Tottenham were winning 4-1, and that's the only information I had, I'd go Kane. I'll give you that. That's pretty unfortunate, right? He had like 0.1 XG in a 4-1 win, which is just not Kane.
Yeah. I think one of the things about whether you've got Kane and then you want to get Haaland in is about Salah, whether you feel comfortable captaining Salah. And there's 2 schools of thought. I don't know whether it's people who are not captaining or going to captain him, but people keep throwing the stat that he doesn't score in game week 2. How is that's like an old wives' tale? He doesn't score on a Tuesday afternoon or something. It's just, but he does also. People can say he has scored loads of points against Palace. He can't stop scoring against Palace. So which side do you take? The answer is people take the side they want to take. They want to captain Salah, so they'll take those stats against Palace. They don't want to captain Salah because they've got Haaland they're going to take those game week 2 stats, which is like he hasn't scored against a goalkeeper with an X in his name or something. It's just,
I don't know. I might just captain the player that Andy doesn't want me to captain.
so you've got that going. I personally think if you're going to go Kane, stick with it. Just stick with it.
And like I said, both of you have said you would stick with Kane, which I understand that.
But it's telling that I didn't. But it's telling that I didn't.
They can win 4-0, 4-1, like they did at the weekend. They've got those attacking players now. All of them. Man City just look like it's just all about Haaland.
But so can I. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think the conclusion is City will never score a goal that Haaland isn't involved in.
No, and I didn't say that, did I?
We'll never win 4-1 and Haaland won't be involved.
The last time
they
we
will
had a good striker at City, it was Aguero, and Aguero killed the league.
And they were do you remember when Jesus was like the sort of deputy striker, and that was that? I remember a season where I had Aguero and Jesus in the same team, because it was a pain because they get rotated and you wouldn't know which one would actually be the one getting the chances in a match. Obviously, Haaland doesn't have that. doesn't have that. Deputy. I guess we'll see how Alvarez, who did sub in for him, maybe plays later in the season. But why you can absolutely say Haaland is a must-have. And fine, I'll take. God. Undermining my argument so bad.
Do you know what? Historia Films in the live chat just pointed out that Haaland has never scored against Bournemouth in his entire career.
Oh, well, there you go.
So there we go.
So you can absolutely say that Haaland is a must-have. And to be fair, I basically agree. It's him or Kane. If you don't want Kane, get him, fine. It's the reasoning of you're saying Man City will never score 4 goals and he couldn't possibly not be involved. Well, of course that could happen. A striker who was basically as good just did that. And City have just as good attacking options as Spurs.
We've all been playing FPL a long time. People in the live chat have been playing a long time. How many times have you made a decision where you've swapped out a player and then they go and punish you the next week? Kane is against Chelsea. It's a great track record. And it can go the other way as well. Haaland could play absolutely amazing. He could miss a penalty. You never know, even though he's got a thunderbolt rocket of a penalty, but nevertheless he could do. And then you go away with a terrible situation there because you've actively swapped out Kane, who has a great game week 3 and great series of fixtures coming up for Haaland. So that's why I just think you should stick with your decision. I think Praz and the burning questions was exactly right. If you've made a decision, stick with it. And it's a good player. We're not saying I'm going to stick with the decision to get a really rubbish player. Kane's a great player. He's been a great player for years. It's brilliant.
So because I want to have something, to have something to refer back to when this goes horribly wrong and everyone calls me an idiot. For me, it's about what the decision you made in pre-season and if you have any new information. Now, I don't think we do have new information, and therefore trust your original decision, or you're examining why you made that decision and you think it's wrong. Fine. If I owned Kane today, I wouldn't make the transfer because it's a -4. If I had Kane at the weekend, I would make the transfer. If I could do it for free, I would do Kane and not spend 0.5 either. I would do Kane to Haaland because that would have been my plan. If I started with Kane, that would have been my plan.
Well,
let's move on. Move on.
I tell you what, if I was a social media guru, there's so many bits of that conversation I would clip out, especially all the mad pronunciations. But we have another.
Is it not pronunciation? By the way,
it is. Yeah.
Pronunciation.
You're actually pronouncing
that is beautiful.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Right. So I've got a new slide up on the screen, which is the XG for every team in the league this first game week. Obviously, we know this is just one game week.
Yes.
But this is the data we've got. So Joe, talk us through the XG of all the teams.
Now, I've highlighted in blue the interesting ones. Top of this is City and Manchester City. Chelsea are high up. Tottenham are high up. Liverpool little bit lower, but still, in the top bit. They're not any surprises there. We expect them to do well. Everyone was going about Wolves. Wolves can't attack. Well, hang on a minute. They're the second expected goals for the week, just behind City. Only Manchester City, with the mighty Haaland, are better in game week 1 in the attacking side in terms of expected goals than Wolves. Then Newcastle, and I find Newcastle interesting. I don't know if everyone's forgotten that Newcastle are owned by zillionaires and they will gradually buy whoever they want. And like Manchester City did, they started off like getting the, your Craig Bellamy's and your Stephen Irelands of this world or whatever. And then they gradually build up. And now they're the mighty unit they are, and they have been for the last few years. Well, Newcastle are the start of that. And they have good players at the moment, and you're already starting to see how attacking they are. And I think everyone on all the sort of fixture difficulties, I think we might have to reassess Newcastle a bit, which is a worry for me as a Brighton fan because we play them next. But nevertheless, they scored a couple of goals, and I think they could be definitely one to watch. I think a Newcastle attacking asset somewhere could be quite useful. So that's something, if I were to wildcard, I would consider. Brighton, Manchester City, aren't they awful? Forget that narrative. It is Brighton are brilliant. 1.5 expected goals. Only City, Wolves, Newcastle, Chelsea, and Tottenham have a better expected goals for them in game week 1. Brighton are good. Welbeck's come, if he can stay fit, which he won't, but he's come back really, really in good shape. They've got when I was at Fest on Friday, people coming up to me as if my team had died. They were saying, "Are you all right? Are you?" And I thought they were referring to my stroke or something. But they were going, "Are you all right? Brighton have sold Basuma and Cucurella. I mean, are you okay? And I was just thinking, no, because we've got Graham Potter, we've got a system-based team. Whoever's gone out, we've got someone to come in immediately. We've got Concedo for Basuma, and we've got the likes of Pascal Gross can play everywhere. So I wasn't bothered at all. And when I was saying, I think we will finish like 12th or something, 10th, people looked at me like I was insane or something. But anyway, stats don't lie. They're doing well. And Fulham, Mitrovic, maybe we should have just got him from the off because we're all going to want him soon. And those that have already got him are already up on everyone else. So 1.25 for expected goals for Fulham there. They were the ones I really highlighted in terms of attacking teams I want to watch out for if I were to wildcard now, but I certainly when I wildcard it in a few weeks. And I'd be interested in some of those players from those teams there. But I don't know about you two, whether you'd gleaned anything from the attacking team stats or any of those teams I've mentioned.
I know for me, the Brighton one stands out, not just because of Brighton, but because of United. I think we go.
Here's the narrative. Yeah, United are rubbish. We know they're rubbish for ages.
That's exactly what I'm going to say, and that it's carrying on, is that we can target United still. That game week 3, when Salah's against them, and we're looking at captaincy choices, there's no reason not to go with someone like Salah again, unfortunately. Brighton were very good. Like you said already, they're a system team. They completely suffocated United, and so many chances fell because of the mistakes that they were making United make, and there was such a massive gap behind United, and I think that's going to carry on. I think they're going to be conceding XG all over the place all season, unfortunately, until that gets sorted out. So I think that's a big thing to mention there. Fulham I thought were great against Liverpool. I thought it was really good actually that everybody was high on Forest, and it was Fulham that drew against Liverpool, and it was who were the other team that did really well? The other promoted team, can't remember what it is now. God, Bournemouth, and of course Bournemouth.
That was Villa
well.
being bad, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah. It was, yeah. Gerrard being out-tacticked by Parker, wasn't it? But yeah, I think obviously this is only 1 week in. City being up the top there says a lot, obviously. But I just thought it was interesting. Some of those promoted teams did quite well, actually, and that Fulham carried on being the attacking team we've seen them be in the Championship. And Andreas Pereira looked very, very good. Mitrovic looked very good. He was targeting the right players, targeted Trent Alexander-Arnold for headers and things, didn't he? So yeah, I think it's quite interesting to look at those just after 1 week. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say Bournemouth 2 goals, expected goals 0.5, half a goal.
Yeah.
So that says it. I think we may start seeing that, and it'll go down basically. Bournemouth not a good attacking side.
I was just going to throw in there as well that I think own goals aren't counted in this. So obviously, again, over a season smoothed out nicely. When we're looking at single matches, for example, Leeds 0.8, I think we're actually more like 1 point something, because obviously Aronson's goal went down as an own goal, and there was a few others this weekend, weren't there, as well? So just keep that in mind when looking at this.
Yeah, cool. Lovely stuff. Joe, is there anything else you want to talk about on
this? I mean, in terms, do if anyone hasn't seen the captaincy video or listened to the podcast, do that, because we look more at the worst defenses on that. So I didn't want to repeat that. Just go and have a look at that video, and I've time-stamped it as well. There's a section on sort of worst defenses there, so that will help. There's something to monitor as the season goes on. in terms of those defenses to target. But I thought in terms of attacking teams, right rooted to the bottom with no goals and expected goals of barely a quarter of a goal is Nottingham Forest. That may continue. So that'll be interesting. I'll be looking at that because I know a lot of people were eyeing up players like Lingard or Johnson or whoever, just getting one of those players in. But I'm holding fire at the moment. So if I were to wildcard, I certainly wouldn't have any Nottingham Forest players in. So yeah, that's just wanted to add there.
I've said it for a while as well. St James's Park, not somewhere where you want to be targeting players, because even if Newcastle are playing a good team, I think they're very, very good defensively at home. And obviously Forest played at St James's Park this week, didn't they? Right, moving on to my section now. And this is going to be a popular one, hopefully. And this is well-owned flops. So these are players that were very, very highly owned going into the first game week and then didn't do anything for us. Now, don't get me wrong, there's so many narratives that go with this, and it's only 1 week and things like that. But these are the players that people are going to start ditching very quickly. We can already see Kane's gone down. And these are players that people are going to be ditching. And what we want to do is just have a look at these players and decide between us, should we be ditching them or shouldn't we? Most of the time, it's just going to be a flat no. As Seb will tell us over and over again today, there is no new information because we've only had 1 game week. But people are moving very, very quickly. They always do in the first couple of weeks because that's when you've got the most engaged managers. So we've got millions of people making moves at the moment, and they won't care how many hits they take. They will just be taking players out if they blank in the first week. So we've got Neto at the top, then we got Bailey. And these, by the way, are ordered in their XG involvement. So Neto was top. Bailey was second. Then we got Kane, then Jesus, Diaz, Andreas Pereira was next, and then Neco Williams, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Cash, and Perisic. Now, I have highlighted Kane, Jesus, and Perisic because for me, I thought they were the kind of real high-profile players that could get moved out, especially as cash cows as well with Kane there, with talk about Haaland, but we've already talked about that already. Neto and Bailey, Joe, if I just talk to you about those two quickly, because pretty much everybody had one of them in their team, didn't they? They both got nice fixtures this week. There's no reason to move on from them yet, is there?
No. I mean, and there's if people wanted to ditch, they can come up with a good argument for that. If they wanted to keep them, they could come up with a good argument. Neto, eye test wise, wow, he looks great. But we've known that. That's not a big surprise there. So we know Neto is a skillful player. He's had a couple of shots inside the box. And so in terms of expected goal involvement, he's the best of these flops, and that is so it's filtered by most owned but no returns, so that ranges from around 73% or so for Jesus, and I think Neto's about 17%, so it's between that really, but these are the top ones that didn't do anything. Bailey as well, so people talking about Bailey, he didn't particularly pass the eye test in 1 game, but he has done in pre-season, and Villa didn't particularly pass the eye test, so they've arguably got a better fixture against Everton. Everton are away, I believe. That fixture, so it's Villa at home, Everton away. Everton, chalk and cheese, home and away. One of those teams. Not all the time, and that may change, but Everton are great at home and less so on the road. So I don't have any problems there. Also, this time last season, Bailey came on. I think I said it earlier. They came on 20-minute cameo and just completely turned the game around. Was amazing. Against Everton. So I would certainly, if you own him, I would certainly play him. I think it's a good fixture. I think after these 2 fixtures, we're a little bit closer to knowing whether we can dump him. And yes, he's headed on the chopping block. And my favourite, Dewsbury Hall, is ready and waiting to come in. And game week 3, let's have a better fixture. I mean, that's the move I've got in my head, because I'm going to have 2 moves in game week 3. I think that's the one I'll probably do. How boring is that? But Bailey to Dewsbury Hall, and then save the transfer into game week 4. That's what I'd like to do, but Mason Mount may change my mind. There might be something coming out about injury. I don't know. If there's an injury or something like that, then obviously I'll change my mind. But I think for those 2, if you've got to keep, if we only had 1 game, and they've both been good in pre-season, so stick with that. Think of game week 1 as just an extension more of all the information we've already got. It just adds to the mix.
Yeah.
One thing to add with Neto is they've just signed Guedes, who obviously plays. Well, he can play in a number of positions, primarily from the left, has played on the right, can play from the front. I'm not saying Neto is going to get dropped, but obviously that does reduce some minutes because you assume that signing is going to go into the team. It's probably Podence or similar who has their minutes limited more, and then when Jimenez comes back in, obviously the team changes again. Maybe Hwang drops out. But yeah, just wanted to add that into that.
Also worth mentioning as well, Bailey played 90 minutes. Wasn't expecting him to play 90 minutes, so that's a big thing for him.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, the funny one with Bailey is like, yeah, talking about, we learned nothing from game week 1, or did we? Like Villa weren't very good, and you'd want to see them turn that around before I would go back on myself and say, okay, we learned something now.
Yeah.
Bailey did get 90 minutes, which is encouraging, but like got 90 minutes when they were terrible. So it's like, oh, which way do I read that?
Yeah, I know. Right, Seb, moving on to Jesus, because we're not going to talk about Kane again, because I don't want you to get hot under the collar all over again. But Jesus up next, because I'm just going to go through these highlighted ones quickly. I thought he looked great. First 45 minutes, I thought he looked absolutely brilliant. He almost looked a bit too forward on in terms of thinking than the rest of the Arsenal team. Almost like he's been playing with those, playing with KDB, basically. He's been...
I forget, was it someone on Match of the Day? It might have been maybe Ian Wright or something who said he looked like a Man City player playing for Arsenal.
Yeah,
and that's not
exactly
even disparaging to Arsenal. It was just he looked like he'd been playing with KDB for however many years.
Yeah. And he looked great. So second 45, I thought Arsenal looked a bit nervier, but first 45, he looked brilliant. The worry about Jesus is that obviously he was the most owned player going into game week 1. That price drop is going to be coming soon if people start, especially if he doesn't do anything this week. But for me, I saw enough in that game to say that he's definitely worth keeping. I mean, the fixtures are beautiful as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? The price change mechanic, because it brings this non-football element into our thinking where, it doesn't matter how well you're assessing football, you can't afford a player because you didn't look at price changes. It doesn't matter, which is interesting because, I would say I have no interest at all in getting rid of Jesus, like none, especially with, worries over other players when Europe comes around. But if he goes and drops to 7.7 million or something, by the time I want that money, maybe I'd rather avoid that. So I'd rather he scored next week and we don't need to worry about it.
But I mean, if he did drop by that amount, that would be because over a number of weeks, probably another 2 or 3, he hasn't done anything. And so game week 3, he's got Bournemouth and then Fulham, then Aston Villa, and then Manchester United. So, I mean, if he hasn't scored by the end of the Fulham match, I would say he's gone for me. I can't afford to hang around.
That's a really good point. I guess the one thing that would obviously save it a bit for me is if he hasn't scored, but other things look all right. Obviously, underlying eye test, whatever. Yeah. I guess the only other scenario is he gets one goal in there somewhere, but your Nunes gets your hat trick. Kane and Haaland both score. Whatever it is, Mitrovic keeps scoring. There could still be a scenario where, which I think is Andy's point, he's so highly owned that he doesn't even need to do that badly for a number of people to take him out.
Yeah.
And Joe, last one, Perisic, that I've got highlighted here.
Yeah.
Obviously, a few of us heard the news that he might not be starting, so took him out. I know, one of our content creators has kept him in there just in case. If you had him in there at the moment, 5.5 million for a player that didn't start, as you've already alluded to, they've signed another fullback, and he loves his fullbacks and he loves that rotation. Sessegnon played a blinder as well. He played really, really well. Would you be looking at Perisic in your team and thinking he's a danger? I need to be thinking about getting rid of him soon.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I didn't start with him because I couldn't guarantee the minutes. So yeah, I mean, we've seen that in game week 1. I think he is the top choice, the favoured one, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's the one that's going to start or get more minutes. He might be favoured in terms of I'll save him for that tough game, I'll save him for that game in Europe, because he's got so much choice in those positions, and also those players can't. They're the ones we've got 5 subs. They're the ones that are going to come off, which is perversely great because they might come off before Spurs concede. Which is one of the fabulous things in FPL is when you have that player, you bank the clean sheet, and everyone else who owns all the other defenders from that team, they lose the clean sheet, and so that's what you would like. So if I started with Perisic, I would definitely keep him because he will get minutes. He's the favoured one. But I don't think he's going to start every game. I don't think he's going to get the minutes. But I think he's also going to look awesome. So when you watch the highlights, when you watch the games live, you're going to come away from that going, "Wow, Perisic is amazing," and that's going to influence people. But for me, it's a wait and see. I'm a game or two away, and I may never get a Spurs defender in because I may never know which one will actually play.
Eric Dyer.
While Perisic may be amazing, he may be the best defender they've got. You obviously, you can't get points if you're not on the pitch.
Yeah.
Andy,
Right.
I just wanted to mention one thing on the price changes, if I may. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
talking about Jesus and a possible price fall because he's highly owned. I think, obviously, they can change it, so please do verify this with anyone who may know. But I think price drops work on a percentage basis and price rises work on like an absolute number, which then increases during the week for subsequent rises. So Jesus, obviously, is highly owned, but he has to have a lot more transfers out to drop than, say, someone who is lowly owned because it works on a percentage basis. So we may get a little more leeway than what we maybe inferred a second ago.
Lovely stuff. Right. Seb, we're going to go on to your section now, which is all about Manchester City because, they're obviously best team in the league, arguably, aren't they? And we're starting to think about what assets we want to get into our teams because they've got Bournemouth at home next week. So on the screen now, I've got their average positions based on this game week that we've just had. So talk us through it a little bit.
Sure. So this is from the Scout members area, the average positions of each City player in the match from the weekend. Green are the starters and yellow are the subs. This is obviously going from, say, north to south, I guess. Edison is at the top, number 31. And what we can see, really, firstly, is that shape is basically a 2-3-5. There's some sort of WM comeback here. And I'll point out, firstly, Walker and Cancelo, number 2 and number 7, respectively, are so narrow, they're effectively forming a box with the two centre-backs, with Rodri in between them. Rodri, by the way, was brilliant. He makes this shape work. And what we're seeing at the moment is almost a return to that Bayern Munich or early City days, Pep Guardiola, where he had his inverted fullbacks who were coming inside and almost playing as like DMs. A few tweaks to that, I guess, in the City system is Cancelo and Gundogan are almost interchanging positions at times and certainly interplaying with one another. And an awful lot of their play is going down that left between, say, an Ake, Rodri, Cancelo, Gundogan, and then Jack Grealish as well, who is sitting a little narrower than Foden, but we'll get onto them in a moment. And just to highlight that, the touches of the ball in that match, which I think is defined as passes received, by the way, so a dribble doesn't count as like 5 touches. Grealish got 77. Foden got 71. Cancelo got 129. Gundogan got 69, but Bernardo then got 20. He came on for him in the 70th minute, something like that. KDB got 73, and he was only sub late on. And Walker got 99. Now, obviously the two fullbacks in Walker and Cancelo lead that quite healthily. Gundogan got a fair few more than KDB, who we can see as well, I think, from this graphic here. It highlights it all right. KDB is almost forming more of that front line, that front 4 or 5, than Gundogan is. KDB, if you look at his individual heat maps, he does prefer that right-hand side, but he pops up on the left as well. And what he's looking for is those channels and half spaces, as you can see, between, say, a Foden and a Haaland and the centre-back. What then Grealish and Foden are doing are spreading wide. They can come inside, absolutely. Foden still put up some decent-ish numbers, which we'll look at in a second. But they're spreading wide. I think there's that famous thing where Henry talks about Pep telling him to hug the touchline at Barcelona. And he scored a goal, but because he wasn't doing that, Pep subbed him off. I wonder if there's a bit of that happening here. What that means is the 2-8s in Gundogan and De Bruyne can come in and fill that gap and support Haaland. And then what we're seeing is that goal that De Bruyne played all the way through to Haaland. Both of you pointed that out, where that's just undefendable, right? The front 4 or 5 are pinning a defence back, but you've got to step up a bit. Otherwise, they'll just play through you and get right in on your goal. But then that leaves that space for Haaland. Centre-backs don't know who to mark. There's 2 centre-backs versus effectively Gundogan, De Bruyne, and Haaland. And then these 2 wide players pinning your fullbacks back. And then and this is John McKenzie on Twitter noticed this, not me, so I'll credit him there. The 2 fullbacks coming inside are then also pinning the midfielders and causing them to stay narrow on the opposition and not be able to help out in that line. So it's all focused towards forcing this ball, as you both mentioned, to Haaland in goal-scoring situations. The knock-ons for us from an FPL sense are, Haaland's brilliant, cool, go for it. De Bruyne, if he was cheaper, I'd be so interested. He's so far forward. Even if he starts deep, he comes forward. Maybe Gundogan could be real interesting at a nicer price, especially if Bernardo leaves. Bernardo came on and did that same job as Gundogan. yes, we love Cancelo, but this isn't the wing back Cancelo. This is, deep lying playmaker Cancelo. If he switches to the right, if they sign a left back, ironically, Zinchenko would have been perfect for this on the left. But if they do sign someone who can play there, Cancelo is better at this on the right. He will come forward more. But he was thoroughly brilliant in a non-FPL sense. And then, Walker, decent enough in this. I'm happy with his minutes, but there's no real attacking threat there. And then, Foden and Grealish. I thought Grealish decent. If you'd like to move on to the numbers as well, just to highlight this.
I'm just wondering, did we
please.
Did we know this before? Like Community Shield played. Did we know this before? Like, did we know this after Community Shield?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Joe,
you said yes.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if this is new information.
Nice.
No, this was mentioned, and because there was talk of it. I've seen quite a bit of talk on Twitter of that, not just from the Community Shield, but before, just from their training and what little we saw. But there was that definite move when it was essentially, I think it was Grealish and then in pre-season Mahrez. So when they played wider, then Cancelo and Walker would come in, and then when also they were doing it so that when Grealish and Mahrez came in, Cancelo and Walker were going on the outside. So that's what they were looking at there. So I guess this is slightly different in terms, but that could have been just a one-off against West Ham. But there is similarities
also plenty
there.
of rotation in this, obviously as well. Pep, he has extremely intelligent quality players, and it isn't something where you have to stand in a certain position, as shown with Cancelo and Gundogan. Yeah. There is rotation in display.
It's very flexible.
So, we can see what you're saying.
I guess that's not new. We knew that they were going to be flexible. And Cancelo can play in a variety of roles. So I guess the question from this is Cancelo worth that extra money over, say, Walker or Ake?
I think, for now, for me, yes, because he's pretty nailed. We know he has that attacking pedigree. Yeah. And even in this position, it's not like he isn't going to get some attacking returns. But let's give it a little while and let's see if this sticks, which, if they go and sign a different type of left back, maybe it doesn't stick. I wonder if you might get more utility out of that 1.52 million elsewhere if he starts dropping off a little bit from an FPL attacking sense.
Now, we're going to bring up some stats now. My big question from looking at all these positions and everything, is based on who we want that third Man City asset to be. So do we want it to be one of those wide forwards? Do we want it to be a Foden or a Grealish? Or do we want it to be a Gundogan, basically? Or a KDB if you can stretch to that.
Yeah.
So we're going to bring up the analysis now and the stats from the weekend and the XGI from the teams and the XGI non-penalty as well. Haaland's obviously up there. He's top. He's, which is just ridiculous at the weekend, wasn't he? But Seb, if you talk us through the stats for some of the other people, don't worry too much about the ones at the bottom, like Rodri, Ake, Walker, whatever. But
I don't think anyone's picking Rodri.
No, Haaland, Grealish, De Bruyne, Foden, Gundogan are probably the ones that are most interesting. So we have had a few chats about Alvarez in the chat as well, so maybe touch on him a bit.
Sure. So just we have on screen now, but for people listening, I'll run through it quickly. Haaland had XGI of 1.74, although without the penalty, that's 0.87. Grealish, 0.87 non-pen XG, not non-pen XGI. Grealish had 0.66, so he's second. Then De Bruyne on 0.47, Foden on 0.33, and Gundogan on 0.28. Alvarez does sneak in with 0.08, and Cancelo's just behind him as well, maybe to show a bit of a drop off there. I think the interesting things here, as you've helpfully highlighted, is, Haaland is brilliant. Get him. We know this. Great. Then Grealish, again, he's up there. Last season, he came second, third for XA per 90, but never really turned it into points, which isn't maybe his fault. If he gets the minutes, he should get the numbers. But if they aren't going to turn into FPL returns, fair enough. I'm going to be shouting into the wind. De Bruyne is still good. We know this, but I think probably too expensive, unfortunately, for our teams. Foden, then, I think the worry would be, oh no, is he pushing wide? Is he going to stay too wide? Is he not going to be involved? Especially on the right-hand side, he's got that left foot. He will want to come in. And this is where it reminds me, I put in the notes, Liverpool, of almost that Salah thing, where just because he starts wide, that doesn't mean that's where he's going to end up. If anything, you think of your Henrys or whatever, and pull outside and then come inside. It's not the same thing happening here, but a player standing on the touchline until a move hits into place or until they get the ball is fine. It's where they end up that we care about. So Foden, and I believe most of this came from assists, not goal, XG for the record as well. So he's creating rather maybe than shooting, but it's one match. Who knows? I don't think we write him off yet. The one that would interest me is that second date alongside De Bruyne, because whether it's Bernardo, whether it's Gundogan, whether it's someone else, they're going to be cheaper and they might be putting up not too shabby numbers. We saw, was it 2 years ago. Gundogan just always in the box. If he's doing that again in that lovely combination with Cancelo, which we saw 2 years ago, I'd be pretty interested. And the last thing I have on that just to talk about is that with those players, Gundogan got a slightly more touches in this match than he got last year per 90. Again, one match, so massive grain of salt. Foden had 71, as I mentioned, but he had 50 per 90 last year. Now, massive grain of salt, but it's an uptick. Walker, just to highlight the fullbacks, even we know Cancelo's involved, but Walker had 99, whereas he averaged 90 last year. Now, only 10%, one match, but I think it just really hammers home that things have changed and players are going to be playing differently, getting different numbers of touches. But if they can still put up the numbers that we see here over a few matches, that's really the bit to pay attention to, I think.
See, Foden, for me, like I'm now not worried about his minutes. I think he's going to get enough minutes to warrant owning him.
Yeah.
And I actually love the fact he played right wing, because he normally plays left. Right wing means I want to play you no matter where I'm going to play you. And I'm quite happy with your versatility to play anyway. You know, I don't think it helps the team that much that he has to cut in. You know, he's not that natural right winger, so maybe that width is what they're looking for, and he's going to keep cutting in just like Grealish would be doing as well. But I'm not worried about that. My worry is that, like we've just said, is he becoming less effective because we've got Haaland, who's that focal point in the middle, and obviously those wingers are having to create that width, and it's not getting as involved or in the box as much as we want to. And like you said, his XG was 0. You know, there was none of those shots inside the box, none of those shots outside the box.
I mean, the big thing here, of course, is you've nailed it. The big thing here is it's 1 week, and so I've just gone into detail about new information that's not new, whatever. Nicely played. No. But, you know, what we're trying to do basically here is we're trying to get ahead of the numbers, which is, you know, dodgy thing to do by looking at how a team is setting up and seeing how that might change the numbers. But what we really need here is we need a few weeks of information to test out our theories.
Yeah. And just very quickly as well, and Joe, I'm going to ask you a question before we move off this as well. They've obviously got Bournemouth this week. For me, whoever plays that right wing slot is going to get a lot of joy, because you've got Zamora playing left back. He's a great player. He's never, ever played in the Premier League before against elite players like this. He is most probably going to have Solanke ahead of him, because Kiefer Moore's been playing up front. That Tavernier is playing just behind, and Solanke's been playing in midfield. I feel like that right wing slot could have a lot of joy. But even then, it's all about Haaland. That's the problem. And it's tough. Obviously, my move that I've been thinking about doing is Kulu to Foden. That's the big thing I wanted to do. And based on no new information whatsoever, I'm thinking about rolling with Kulusevski now, because I'm looking at Foden, I'm thinking, it's not inspiring me to go to him at the moment, even after one game week. But I mean, Joe, if we go on to quick question before we move off this, because then we want to look at the community team. Assuming most people own Cancelo and Haaland now, who would be your third Man City asset? If you had to get a third Man City asset.
Currently, at the moment, I would go for another defender at the moment. Yeah. Because I think if I was why I haven't got 3, I've only got the 2, is because I think as Seb was saying, we don't know yet who that third one is. But at the moment, I think for safety, for getting points, for getting 6, 7, maybe 8 points with a bit of bonus, the likes of, say, Walker or Diaz or Edison, just to get that extra clean sheet in. And double up there. That's why we do it at the moment. But yes, I would be looking at whoever is going to be most likely to supply Haaland. So yeah, to be honest, it's the same as it ever was with me and City. I've always wanted, when they've had a striker, basically Aguero, or even before that, I've always wanted their main man, who's their striker, and I've always wanted a defender, and I've always been unsure who to get in midfield. But I've got De Bruyne in if I could afford him, but he's unaffordable at the moment.
Yeah.
So he's out of the equation. So it's the same as it ever was. And I may never get any Man City. I may never know. It may be not be game week 38 when I inevitably get Mahrez in for a final day flourish. But I may never know, and I may never get that. So yeah, I think I would go with that. Gundogan would be the one I want to get because he's nicely priced. And he's got a pedigree of doing well. But I don't know yet. I don't know. I haven't got enough information.
Seb, really quickly then, same to you. If you had Mount in your team and you weren't very happy about it and you wanted to make that switch, but don't worry about the details if you wouldn't switch him. But if you had someone like that, or Diaz or whoever, and you wanted to move to a City midfielder this week, who would you move to?
That question, Foden.
Foden, cool. So if it was Kulusevski, you'd swap to Foden. Got it, right.
See what you did there.
Right, community team. Now, Seb, you took over the community team from me, and you did an absolutely amazing job. Absolutely smashed it. And the community team was set. I thought I had the points on here, actually. I can't remember how many points it got in the end.
72.
72, smashed it. So 72 points. Do let us know in the chat if you beat the community team this week, because obviously that's what it's all about. Where is it in the table at the moment?
It's 135th, so 134 people did indeed beat it, which includes me and you, Andy. Sorry, Joe.
It does indeed. 66.6% of this stream beat the community team this week. But yeah, let us know in the chat if you've done it. What we need to briefly talk about now, and it is going to be brief every week, is what moves are we going to be making?
Cool. So what we'll do is we'll put, the polls out on Twitter like we normally do, but this week might be simple. I asked for nominations for transfers so we could discuss them. The overwhelming reply was just roll it. Yeah. We did have a few suggestions. Klops and Robbos, which I thought was a great name, said Bailey to KDH. So maybe thinking where you are, Joe, but in a few weeks.
That's something I'm thinking, but not this week, but it's for game week 3 or 4, definitely.
A few people were also a fan of Bailey out, but just said Bailey out. We did have Running Man Gray suggest a Robbo to Diaz and Jesus to Nunez for a -4. And then a few people mention Saka to Foden as well, which I think we've discussed tonight. But I may not even put a poll up for this one because so many people said roll.
Yeah.
I think we'd all go with roll, right? Is there anything you'd change there?
I think we still have to put a poll up though, because that's the whole point.
Okay.
I think we've got to put the poll up and put roll up and then just put 2 other moves or whatever. But I think it's important to still put the poll up.
I think this is going to really spark interest game week 3, and it's just one of those weeks where game week 2 is just roll is the most sensible thing. It's a good team. It's the template team.
Yeah,
as it should be. There are a few issues that might become weak links, but it's removing the weak links that Bailey could be.
The interesting one is
Ward
the
Everson
cheap midfielders and the goalkeepers. I think could be interesting in the future.
I think Ward Everson is not a goalkeeping combination I would be comfortable with. I personally got Ward Sanchez, so I'm happy to play Sanchez, and their fixtures are very nice. So if you wanted to still go cheap, you can go for that. But I would probably perhaps look to get maybe Ramsdale in down the line, and Bailey to Dewsbury Hall.
But the chat are overwhelmingly saying roll as well.
Roll the transfer. Roll it.
Interesting you mentioned Ward and Sanchez rotating really nicely, because it was the other way round. They got their points this week, wasn't it?
That is the way.
Always happens.
If you are playing rotating goalkeepers, you got to suck that up. I'm not gonna complain. It always happens.
So
but
I
want my bench players, who the ones that even if they get rotated on the bench, I want them to do well, because then they're going to retain their value, and then when I play them, hopefully they're going to continue doing well. So I'm very happy to play Sanchez this week, for example, and I think he's in the scout picks as well.
Yeah.
So mentioning that, we will obviously, we've got Ward and Everson here, but we'll put up a poll then for the transfer. I was trying to get out of that one, but yes, fair enough, Andy. We will, however, also put up polls for captaincy and our little bench order, which will include any lineup changes. I'll work out a way to do that neatly, but they will go out over the course of the rest of the week.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to still do the poll, because then obviously the whole point is the community is picking. If that makes sense.
I was just preempting the poll, but you're absolutely right. I was just trying to get
next week will be interesting. There'll be a hell of a lot of choices people will go with. But
and that's good. That's exactly what we want. Yeah, we got a lot of Limp Bizkit in the chat. Right, looking at my bus team. So I am looking fairly good, I think, for next week. I've got Ward in goal. I've got Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Robertson, James in defence. I've got Salah. Salah is captain on this, but actually it will be Haaland as my captain. Martinelli, Bailey, Kulusevski, and then I've got Haaland and Jesus up top. Basically, I'm either rolling or I'm doing Kulusevski to Foden. And as the week's gone on, I've been more inclined to hold the transfer, because I will have Kulusevski with 2 lovely fixtures in game week 3 and 4, and I'll have 2 free transfers for game week 3. Wow. So for me, I think rolling makes a lot of sense. I know we've had the discussion today, Seb, but
I'm just itching to attack this team.
Really?
Why?
Yeah, you can't believe it, can you?
That's basically
you're looking at this as a work
team.
of art. The Mona Lisa, how can he graffiti that? You got some good players, but Ward's good. So I am looking at your team, aren't I? You're playing Wards against your 2 Arsenal attackers.
Yeah.
So,
but he's got Everson on the bench. He can't.
Yeah, exactly. So that's probably why I wouldn't have started with Everton Ward.
I mean, they're both 4 million. I can't move them out for anybody.
And James is great. Kulusevski's great. Trouble is they play each other. So chances are one of them is going to do well and one of them isn't.
I don't have James for clean sheets. I have James because he's on every set piece and he's a machine.
So I look at this and I think, yeah, it needs a better goalkeeper. And the Kulusevski James thing is not ideal. Granted, James is there for attacking points and clean sheets are a bonus. But I do look at that and I think it's good, but I think it could be a bit better. I know you've come in here swinging away with your 79 points, but I'm looking at this and thinking you can do better, Andy.
This is outrageous.
I'm happy with it. I think James and Kulusevski will easily both get attack and returns, or it could be 0-0 and they get me 9 points.
Or they don't play each other the week after and it's fine.
Or that. I mean, look, game week 1, 79 points. Game week 3 looks lovely. Game week 4 looks lovely. And I'll have 2 free transfers in game week 3. Game week 2, I've still got 9 players there that are playing at home. And I've got 2 4 million keepers that are freeing up money, which meant I could get Kulusevski. So I'm happy.
I never like it when you've got defenders against attackers. I think you're limiting your points there.
Do you know what?
I think a bit of better planning, and you would have avoided this.
It was meant to be Seb's team next, but I'm going to bring Joe's team up next for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, you better not have any defenders against attackers, pal.
Here we go. So we've got. So Joe, do you want to talk us through your team?
Okay, right. I've got Sanchez in goal, who's not playing any of my attackers.
Sanchez?
You're rotating keepers.
I've got Cancelo, who's not playing any of my attackers. I've got Gabriel, who's not playing any of my attackers. I've got Alexander-Arnold and Robertson to complete a 4 back line. I've got a 4-4-2. Mason Mount, who's playing Tottenham. I don't have any Tottenham defenders. Salah is my vice captain. Martinelli, I don't have a Leicester defender or goalkeeper. Bailey, who's on gradually, the clock is ticking for his demise in my team, but let's give him another go again against Everton. Haaland as my captain and Jesus. No attackers against defenders. They are all playing at home.
Sorry, pal, don't you have Patterson on the bench?
And
what if they keep a clean sheet against
Bailey?
Everton?
Yeah, it's true.
Wow.
I'd probably do Bailey to KDH if I were you.
No, that's fine.
But then they play Arsenal.
This is obviously this is why people come for this value advice. How foolish of me! I really should have been playing my Everton defender away from home this week.
Yeah. No, look, it's a great team, Joe. Obviously, it looks good this week. Didn't do so well last week, but maybe it's
I know.
Okay
I'm going to have. You know, I've got to live with that. And I have to live with that every minute.
Have a half pint and go to sleep.
I know. And Chris,
obviously, Mount's the interesting one, though, isn't it? Like, have you got any worries about Mount? People picked Mount because
but
he
I'm
was
not
the safe pick for weeks.
Yeah, I mean, as weak links go, I think it's Bailey and Mount are the ones I'm looking at. But then you never know. So, but they're the ones in game week 3 I'm looking at and thinking, ooh, will one go? Will both go? They're the ones I think.
Yeah. Interesting. And 0.5 million in the bank. So when you've got the 2 free transfers, that's going to look very nice. And on to Seb's team. So Seb, your best team is looking a little bit different because obviously you've got 5 at the back, but just talk us through it very quickly.
Yep. I might have to scroll to it because I have the community team up. So 1 second. It's very similar to yours, isn't it? But just a bit of change at the back. I have Sanchez starting in goal. Trent, Cancelo, Walker, James, and Gabriel in that 5 at the back. Salah, Luis Diaz, and Martinelli in midfield, and Erling and Jesus up front. I currently have the captaincy on the Man City number 9. I think I'll keep it there, but it's pretty close. But there's nothing between those 2 players. Go with whatever you fancy. I guess my only decision would be this. What I've got up here is benching Bailey. It's that same question again with Walker, Gabriel, Bailey. Obviously, I'm playing Walker at home to Bournemouth. So it's just Gabriel at home to Leicester or Bailey at home to Everton. I think what I've lined up there is probably what I'll go with, and it's probably the sensible choice. But a shame not to be starting Bailey in the second of his okay fixtures. But I think that team's better. I mean, if I did, it would be Bailey for Gabriel.
Did you play Bailey last week?
Yes, and I benched Walker.
You did. I'm wondering why you picked both.
I explained earlier because so Walker, James, and Bailey for me, alongside a few others, right? Martinelli was nailed by the end, but I wanted cover for a couple of uncertain X-Mins players. I also originally had Doherty over Gabriel, I think it was originally, who obviously was an X-Men's risk to the point where he was so much so that I then, because we got that information that we believed, that I transferred him out for Gabriel and then kept Bailey. I wanted Bailey for those first opening 2 fixtures, and I wanted good cover on my bench for because there's every chance that against Bournemouth, what is it, like Stones, Diaz, Ake, and Cancelo play, and Walker's benched, and then I'd be happy to have a playing first bench.
So you wanted Bailey for those first 2 fixtures, but now you're benching him. What's changed? What new information do you have that means you can now bench him?
He was always going to be benched for the second one.
Why?
But he's cover.
It's his best fixture.
Oh, the first one was better, wouldn't you say?
No. What, home to Everton?
Oh, fair enough. I mean, hey, who would you... So I wanted him in the 15.
It's not my team. It's not my team.
Those first 2 fixtures. you can't do that. What would you... genuinely...
It's Walker,
I might follow your advice.
Walker's
so would you start Gabriel? Or James could be an option, I guess.
Walker's the one for me that just has... I just don't think he has a lot of upside. I don't think he gets close enough to getting assists or goals or anything like that. So for me, I think Bailey.
I think he's probably his chance of a clean sheet is probably about as good as Bailey's chance of an attacking return, though.
What I would have done originally is I wouldn't have had Walker. I think I would have taken him down to 4.5 and played Bailey in fair fixtures. But
I think, we were talking earlier about wildcards and stuff. I think I sort of alluded to, but I'll say it specifically now. If I did know for sure that my Walker would be fine, James would be fine. Yeah, because Bailey did nothing. I probably would have just gone with a 4.5 Bailey.
I'm having flashbacks to early Scoutcasts with Mark and Granville, and Granville would always be perplexed that Mark always got points off the bench, and Mark would always say it's because he had a good bench. And Andy, you're basically saying to Seb, your team's too good. Your squad is too good. You're basically saying, why have you gone for a good squad?
I didn't think you were going to defend me there, Joe. Thank you.
Well, no, because
Seb
this is an
never goes for a good squad. He always hates having money on the bench.
No, this is an age-old Scoutcast argument around bench points, and I've always maintained that it's fine to have bench points because you've got that player and you can bring them in, and it shows that they're in good form and they retain their value. And I think if your choice is Walker or Bailey to start, then you're in a great position because they're both good options this week. That means your first sub is good. That means if any one of these players doesn't play for whatever reason, and my first sub, by the way, isn't Patterson, it's Pereira at Fulham. So slightly better.
Fair enough.
I couldn't be bothered to change the order for the previous team when I did the graphic. But just sums them up. But Pereira would be that. But I think this is a good squad because I can't see any weak links.
So I hear what you're saying, Andy. And if I had the information I have now, just to contradict everything I said earlier, before game week 1, I would not have Bailey. I'd have a 4.5 midfielder. The reason I did it is because I didn't have enough certainty on Walker, James, Bailey himself, I guess, playing, well, I guess starting and playing, not coming off the bench is what I needed. But I thought there was definitely a world where Walker and James in particular might not play the first week, and therefore I'd be happy to have what was probably one of the best bench options / starters in Bailey. And then when I had him in the squad, the question was, okay, who should I be starting now that I have them? And I was like, well, Bailey's actually... he's got that great fixture. If I own him, I might as well use him. So I did over Walker. This week, I think this is my best lineup, and I still have that great first sub. And my defense is more nailed than I thought. So brilliant. Good times. And yes, I'm probably looking to downgrade Bailey. If I'd known all that beforehand, totally. But I didn't. So I took a bit of risk management, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. No, fine. We'll see what happens next week. Right, moving on to the question section. Mate, now this is...
If Bailey scores.
Now I wonder if I'm going to win this week.
I know. This is my favourite new section now. So
after rubbishing Andy's team, coming at me with his magic beans.
We only had 5 questions and Seb won 10-0. So people in the chat, here we go then. So this is the new section, which is Convince the Host. Basically, you're going to chuck some questions in the chat and Seb and Joe have to try and work their way with their words to try and convince me as best as they can. Whoever convinces me the best will win the point for the question. Now, they do not have to have opposing views. If they want to have opposing views, that's absolutely fine. But if they don't want to, they don't have to. It's just about how much they can convince me that their answer is the best, if that makes sense. Oh, Seb's put something in the chat on Zoom that's taken Joe out of it.
That is that question. Oh no, is it done something to the screen?
Yeah, you'll have to maybe chuck it in the
Sorry.
YouTube chat if that's cool, because it literally just deleted Joe with your little.
Oh goodness, comment. I'm so sorry. It was just the question from earlier, the super chat that you wanted.
Yes,
to
if you could chuck it into the chat, we'll quickly answer that one first while people chuck questions.
Okay, it's now in YouTube.
Lovely stuff.
And said double everyone. It's a good thing I was
Here
just
we go.
a question,
So,
right?
already got Walker. Dyer to Ake for game week 2, as in game week 3, I will transfer to Perisic. Or which other 5 to 5.5 defender would be suitable in game week 2? So, does he do Dyer to Ake, or does he choose another 5 million defender, basically?
I would go, if you want to make that transfer, I would go with Walker off the top of my head, because of most reasons
Walker.
We've said. He's already got
Walker.
Goodness.
I'd keep Dyer, I think. Don't see much wrong with Dyer.
I guess the assumption was he wants to lose Dyer, but yeah, I'd keep Dyer. I'm happy enough.
This is the greatest advert for price points I've ever seen. I've got all of these 5 million defenders. I'm not sure about any of them. Who can I switch to? Well, if you had lots of different price points, you could perhaps, will I get James in? Will I get Robertson in? Will I get Cancelo in? Or perhaps I would consider going down. I would mix up your price points a bit, get a cheaper defender, free up some money. He's looking at 5 million defenders and going, which other 5 million defenders? Well, consider a 4.5 million defender and freeing up some money, and consider price points and some more expensive price points in defense, because that would help out.
Saliba would be nice, wouldn't it?
I was going to say that.
If we've now got that information that we think he looks brilliant, he may be the nailed one, you also get a bit of money in the bank.
Yeah. Sorry, there's so many. We're being bombarded with weird chats in the chat.
Are you posting that, Andy?
It's pretty. Right, here we go. So the first one's going to be to Joe then. And it's from Delight Daniel, and he is asking, is Darwin going to change the template?
No, because most people have already got a striker that's not Haaland that is about 8 million. And was Darwin 9 million?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got Jesus, or you've got whatever, 7.5 striker, hasn't changed the template particularly, because that role, strikers always change. There's always coming in and out of form, largely based on fixtures, you would imagine. So I don't think he's changed the template at all. He's just an affordable player to get in a little bit more, but you have to make a sacrifice somewhere. But I don't think the template's particularly changed. It just means a slightly more expensive player has to be downgraded somewhere. This is one other player, so not a template change. It's not like, where am I going to get 14 million from kind of player.
Seb, what do you think?
I will take the other side, just because I do actually believe it might be the right answer. I guess personnel-wise, you could still keep 2 strikers, but 3 Liverpool. I think if you want Darwin, you are going to have to free up a Liverpool spot. And while you could do, say, a Diaz to a Mount or a Robertson to a cheaper defender, I think there's an opportunity to switch up the makeup of your squad there. Like you said yourself, Joe, a 4-3-3 or what have you. And I think if people aren't just doing a straight swap, which I don't think they can, I think people will take that opportunity to perhaps jump on a Robertson to a Saliba even. And then you've suddenly got this money. That means you can go 3 million, you can get 3 strikers, you can upgrade a Bailey, whatever it is. So I do actually think out of most of the players we've seen this week, he probably has the potential to switch it up more than anyone else.
Nice. I think there is an element to him that he will always be a differential, I think, because people will be reluctant to move a Liverpool player on. So yes, indeed, I'm arguing against myself here. Could indeed break the template, because he's one of those players that, like Haaland, everyone's got him in and everyone's going to get him in, and it's just going to rocket.
Don't you come stealing my point by revising yours.
To be honest, Seb, you just convinced me. I don't know about Andy, but you convinced me.
Moving on to the next one. This is from Danelius, and he is saying, and this is a nice quick one, and everybody's going to be talking about it as the week goes on. Salah or KDB for captain in game week 2? Seb, start with you. Oh, sorry, Salah or KDB? Oh, I thought it said Haaland.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I
that's
was
Sorry,
gonna, so
I'm going to change his quickly and just change it to Haaland. So Salah or Haaland, captain, game week 2.
oh goodness. I mean, I'll just give up the point on this one. It's so close. I'm captaining Haaland because I am. Like genuinely, I think like the models literally have it at like 50-50. So, you know, there is nothing to give here. I'm
That
going
is the
Haaland.
worst convince me ever.
I will give away the point. I have nothing to convince you on. Either is
Joe.
fine.
Go on, Joe.
Right. No. Plug in the captaincy video again, but we spoke about 15 minutes on this very issue, and Haaland smashes Salah in terms of goals. The team is set up so that he scores, and Liverpool Salah is a massive cog in a very powerful attacking unit there. But is he the main man? Well, he's a little less the main man, but he's still a main man there. But I think Haaland is the one who is more likely to get a hat-trick against a newly promoted side. And I think, as Seb mentioned, I think the odds are absolutely huge for City to score and to score a lot. I do like Salah's stats against Palace, but at the same time, I just cannot look past Haaland this week. If it was KDB against Haaland, I don't know. That is a question. KDB gets more points. He could assist all of Haaland's goals and then get bonus. And I think that would mean you get more points.
You know what's interesting on what Joe was just saying? If you asked me last season, which team, Liverpool or City, they both win 6-0, which one's more likely to have one player involved in all of it and which one's more likely to spread the points around? You'd probably say Salah for Liverpool and City spread it around.
Right.
It's funny how we've so quickly almost flipped that in our heads, right?
Well, we've had 2 games of that now, the Community Shield and obviously game week 1, where Haaland's just looked incredible. I would be flummoxed if Haaland was suddenly rubbish against Bournemouth. I'd just be weird. Whereas Salah, I'm fairly certain he'll do well and score, but there's just that nagging doubt. So that puts me to Haaland, I think.
Okay.
Joe did 15 minutes on it. You can give him the point. That's cheating. He got to have a warm up for this one.
Next one. Tony D asks, how much data do we need before we have enough information? It's a good question. Joe, what do you think?
I would say a minimum of 4 matches. And even that isn't enough. Ideally, what you want is a range of data. You want as much as you can get. So over the last year or so, a year or 2. And you also want really recent as well to see how they compare. And you also want to see how they compare against those types of sides as well. 4 fixtures against a range of sides, easy and tough matches, gives you a piece of the jigsaw, but it doesn't give you the whole jigsaw. And so I would say tentatively 4 minimum, but really you just need lots. And that's why data is so much better around after Christmas time. I think we get so much more information then.
Seb?
It's not binary. There's never enough. More is always better. But of course, there is a tipping point where you go from simply not enough to it starting to become a decent amount. And then we just refine and we become more certain in our inferences and assertions based on that data. Of course, as then Joe alluded to, the thing in football is that stuff changes. So, if you take Kane's numbers from when he was young, oh, great, we've got loads of data, but so much has changed in that time that old data might not be that useful to us anymore, depending on how we're using it. So a bit like, I guess, is it the Hall of Fame in Scout, where like it takes however many seasons, 10 seasons, but it weights it more to recent seasons for obvious reasons. What you want to do is you want to get as much data as you possibly can and then weight it to recent information, which may be whereas Joe's, 4 weeks comes in, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, a whole season, whatever you want. And of course, you want to identify key tipping points like a change of manager or a changing role or starting or something like that. For FPL purposes, it's a game of making decisions on not enough information. So for FPL, 6 weeks at a push, but really for like football analytics, anything less than a season is bad.
Lovely stuff. And then last question from Elias A says, what would you do with Rashford? So Seb.
So I guess that assumes you own him.
Yeah.
It always depends on the rest of the squad, doesn't it? I'll go back to what I said earlier on to be consistent. You bought him for a reason. And yeah, Man United were terrible against Brighton, but Brighton are really good. They are very good, especially in those matches where Potter gets to showcase his tactical nous and take apart a team that are learning a new system and frankly aren't that good unless they're going to have a lot of time in that system. I think we saw, what was it? Within 10 minutes, Brighton weren't playing it out the back. They were going pretty direct. And that just threw Man United. It's quite simple. Potter's very, very good. And unfortunately, Ten Hag either hasn't had the time, doesn't have the personnel or whatever. So maybe we see more from Ten Hag in future matches. We saw something in preseason to suggest that, it's not a lost cause. So I think you made the pick for a reason, so you keep him. If you absolutely must lose him, I think you can afford, let's assume you have Martinelli, otherwise I'd say him. I think you can afford to wait a week and see who someone like Joe might be doing with Bailey, because you've got a similar player who could go down to like a 5.5. Narrison, Rodrigo at 6, just to talk about Leeds ones.
Lovely. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I would keep. So they're playing Brentford next away, and then they play Liverpool. So game week 3 is a perfect time to ditch him because it's a tough fixture. I think the problem with Manchester United at the moment, they're so disjointed. So Martial, I don't know when he's back. I would presume he would be favoured up front. I don't know where Rashford would go. I mean, there's Eric. I mean, Eriksen was up front as in a false 9, and then Ronaldo comes on. Too much up in the air. There's too much up in the air with the personnel. They're not a team I would invest in. In the middle of pre-season, when they looked quite good in pre-season, in the earlier games, I was quite gung-ho. I had a video on Scouts with Rashford in it. But as the pre-season matches went on, as the matches got tougher, then I think, and the match against Brighton is a slightly, I wouldn't totally say that proves that Manchester United are terrible. I think there's enough evidence. I mean, all their fans are, they're looking at all the other teams and the transfers they're bringing in, and Manchester United are trying and then failing to get Arnautovic in. I mean, that's pretty low, really.
I don't think we failed. I think we pulled out of it, didn't we?
Yeah, of course you did.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't like him anyway. Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, they're a team in a total mess, and I wouldn't go near them at the moment until they prove to me they're not in a mess.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right. Would you like to know who won tonight?
Not really.
No?
I know, but yeah, I do want to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, one of you did give away a question, and the winner is Joe again. Well done, Joe. Well
Why
done.
am I the winner again?
Well, Seb gave you an answer and just went, yeah, because I am picking him. But yeah, Joe's the winner again. Well done. 3-2.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
I thought
3-2. Whoops.
See, if I was in your class and I spent like 20 minutes just absolutely rubbishing your teaching skills, and then you had a test, and then I ended up.
See, that's why you're not a teacher,
man.
Joe.
I'm a fair person.
Because I would have bought
because you won't
there,
bully children back.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got an F again. Maybe you should be nicer.
Right. That kind of sees us at the end now. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for being here. We had almost 1,200 people here again tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. So awesome numbers. Make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe. They pop up on the screen as the thing goes on. Look, there's even going to be one coming up now. Look, there it is. Joe, I hope you've enjoyed your evening with everybody.
Yep, it's been fun.
Good.
It has been. I'm looking forward to game week 2 with all my home players who aren't playing each other.
Yeah,
Get back in the cupboard.
Yeah, and Seb wins the quiz. And Seb, I hope you've enjoyed yourself as well.
Oh, so much. Yeah, very, very much so. I know we had a couple of points of disagreement, but that's what it's all about, right? I really, really enjoy those. Whether I'm right or wrong, the whole point is to chat that out and improve both of our thinking together. So yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Exactly. So again, thank you so much. Enjoy game week 2. Obviously, enjoy making those transfers and kind of being back in the season again, because this is all what we've wanted. So we've got to enjoy the highs and the lows. And if you had a low, just make sure you realise that there's going to be a high just around the corner, hopefully. So we will see you all again next week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.